Hello, everybody, and welcome to the City of Whitehall's first ever virtual town hall, in which we'll be discussing the Safer Whitehall initiative, among other topics. My name is Megan Meyer. I am your Community Affairs Manager. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. First, thank you for all the thoughtful questions that you submitted. Those have been compiled and will be asked during the Q&A portion of the town hall at the end of our time together. Additionally, I would encourage you, if you do have questions as we go along, to type them into the chat box and send those to organizers and panelists so that we can take a look and answer as we go. Finally, we understand that you all are busy, and so if you do have to leave us early today, don't forget that you can watch a recording of the virtual town hall both on the city's website at whitehall-oh.us or on the city's Facebook page or YouTube channel. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the agenda, and then we'll get started. So we're going to get a welcome today from your Mayor, Kim Maggard, followed by some interesting information from Tyler Darling with Franklin County Public Health. And then we're going to get into the meat of this and the Safer Whitehall initiative with Chief Mike Crispin. And then we're going to follow that up with some time with our Fire Chief Preston Moore. At the end, again, we'll go into that Q&A session where we'll spend the most time here together. So with that, I would welcome your Mayor, Kim Maggard.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today and for joining us because I know that you care about the safety of the Whitehall community. And I'd also like to say thank you to Chief Moore, our fire department chief, and our police chief, Mike Crispin. Thank you for being here and being so concerned about our community. And I'm looking forward to everything that you're going to say today and information that you're going to share with us. I'd also like to thank Franklin County Public Health and Columbus Health for their efforts in keeping Whitehall informed about the COVID-19 virus. I'd like to also say that it's very important that we have collaborative relationships, especially with Franklin County Public Health and Columbus Public Health, as well as other agencies such as the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission and the Central Ohio Mayors and Managers Association, so we can sit down and talk about these things, discuss everything, and share resources. So I want to give a big shout out to them as well. I'd also like to say that today we're going to be talking about many different things. Columbus Public Health, such as opioid addiction and the importance of how that figures into the pandemic as well. And I'd like to introduce today Tyler Darling. He is from Franklin County Public Health, and he's the opioid injury prevention liaison with Franklin County Public Health. And he's also going to speak specifically to COVID-19. And Tyler is the first responder liaison with Franklin County Public Health. So Tyler, welcome, and can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kim Maggard, and thank you for the City of Whitehall for including us on the town hall today. And then we also want to go ahead and give a thank you out to the community members of Whitehall for all that you've done so far during this epidemic to make sure that yourself and everyone around you is safe. So to begin, I am going to start off with some numbers for you guys. I'm going to ask for control of screen. Thank you. Cool. Awesome. So start off, we're going to go over some of the numbers that we have updated. These numbers, so these numbers are updated on our website every single day at 2:00 p.m. as you can see. So the new numbers that come out today will be reported on there today. But so what we have so far, and this is the numbers for COVID-19 cases in Franklin County. This excludes the city of Columbus and the city of Worthington. So the cases that we have confirmed are 757 confirmed cases with 31 probable cases, gives us about 788 total cases at the county level. Hospitalizations from that as you can see, are 119 and 25 deaths out of those 788 cases. The good thing that we see is that 553 of the 788 people have either recovered or on their way of recovering from COVID-19. As you can see below, it doesn't discriminate against age or sex, and at this point, community or anything else. With this data here, I just want to go ahead and say again, thank you. These numbers could be way worse than they are. We've seen way higher numbers in other capital counties and other states that surpass what we have. So really, really big thank you to all of you guys for your efforts in making sure that we keep these numbers as low as possible. So to pass on from the numbers, we are going to hop in about what more you guys can find on this website. So other than data, here at the top, there's a scroll bar. And the first thing on there is get help now. And this is work with our community health workers. And I'm going to touch in a little bit more detail about that here in a second. But the second tab over is a volunteer sign up. So as you guys know, there are need for plenty of help with everything going on. So this could entail everything from signing up to help at a food bank, all the way to like helping bring materials to healthcare providers and such. So we really do encourage people to sign up to become a part of our Medical Reserves Corps, which the main work right now is helping with the COVID-19 response. The next thing over is we are actually asking for people that are interested in becoming a disease detective. You can simply click on this link and it will take you to a page to fill out your information here. And basically what disease detecting is, it includes tracing or monitoring contacts of people that have been affected, so the people that they've had contact with, and supporting the quarantine of those contacts. So you basically in a role where you're calling individuals, getting information about their contacts and their status of the COVID-19, and really enforcing them to stay quarantined and telling the people that they've been in contact with stay quarantined. We now have almost like half of our health department in this role and are looking to increase it, as that's the call from the governor. Back to the web page here. PPE request form. This is for healthcare facilities and nonprofits that are on the front lines of this epidemic. As we know, PPE is at somewhat of a shortage, so we do everything that we can to get some of those healthcare facilities the PPE, and here they can make the request. The next one over, if for some reason you have a bunch of face masks that you really would like to donate, so that they could go to one of those healthcare providers, there is a place where you could go to donate medical supplies. And then also we have the ODH hotline on here for other questions that aren't maybe answered on the website or we don't go over today. ODH, this hotline is always open, and they are always taking your call from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. One other thing I wanted to touch on before I went into the resources from our community health workers, it has come up across the nation in our county here also. There has been a worry in the African American population with wearing a mask and it being taken in a way that they are engaging in certain activities that maybe that's not happening, and the stigma behind that. So we have created guidance specifically for African Americans around wearing face masks that you can find here. And I won't open it up and go into the small detail, but basically what that outlines is it tells the importance of why everyone should wear a mask, and then it also goes in and gives some tips. So it's saying things such as stay away from fabrics or materials that have very like deeply held stereotypes to them. So basically, don't put a red bandana around your face and tie it up, or like a blue bandana or anything that could be seen as gang affiliated to kind of help reduce that stigma. With that, also, again, don't just like take a scarf and tie it. If you can, try to get a mask that has the loops, just so you don't, or no one is expecting some type of unsavory behavior that is not intended for. So we just really wanted to get that guidance out there, as we feared that some African people in the African American population would rather choose not to wear a mask than to face the stigma that comes behind maybe wearing an improper mask. So with that, I would like to talk a bit more about, I know I only have so much time here, I would like to talk a bit more about our community health workers and what they can do for you. So we have really great community health workers at Franklin County Public Health that have been in their role before COVID and will be after COVID. But as you can imagine, they are very, very as abused currently. So these individuals are individuals with previous life experiences and can help people with anything from health insurance, food, utilities, transportation, all the way to basically like understanding the healthcare system and how to get care. As we know, sometimes that can be a challenge navigating. We have 4 community health workers, and through this, our website, they can be contacted and definitely can get you some of that help that you need. So the next thing that I really wanted to talk about before I go here is COVID's definitely overtaking the health department, as mostly everyone now is in some type of role that is incorporated with that. So for myself, I usually am just a project on coordinator, and I coordinate all things naloxone at the health department. But now we are seeing, like myself, I am now the first responder liaison. So all the questions and PPE requests and everything from first responders goes through me. With COVID taking over the health department, we are still very focused on the opioid crisis, as we've seen an uptick in overdoses during all of this. So since the first weekend of April, we have seen countless of overdose spikes in our community. And basically what that is in if there's a 24-hour period, the coroner sees 5 or more fatal overdoses, she will put out a surge notification where the health departments, different chiefs around the jurisdictions, and everyone gets on the phone call and talks about what they're seeing and what we can do and what alerts need to go out to kind of stop these overdoses from happening. So we have had about 7 of those since the first weekend of April, about every single weekend now. And we kind of saw this coming with the social distancing and not having those connections can really, and all this fear can just really lead into not only people that are in the current addiction, but people that have maybe recovered, sending them back into a relapse because of everything that's going on right now. It was weird because in March, we weren't really hearing anything about it, kind of asked about it, and then it came really, really tough. So this is especially hard for us as the county health department. We usually do our community naloxone trainings. We'll come out anywhere, train any amount of people, and pass out naloxone. Obviously, we can no longer do that in that setting. So what we have done is we have created an online mail order where any individual or Franklin County resident can go online and order a Narcan kit directly from the website. And I personally will go into the office, put the kit together, mask and gloves, no worries, and actually just mail that kit directly to you so everyone stays safe and that we're still able to get the Narcan out into the community. So we have seen that that strategy has been used quite a bit. It's just been released for a month and we've had over 50 orders. So we're really happy about that. Also, I wanted to include that the Whitehall Fire Department, the Safe Station, is a 24/7 Narcan pickup spot through a grant that we have with ODH and Randy Jones over there, and they're all really great. So that is also a place if you're in the neighborhood or by the fire department and you want to go pick up Narcan, they have it for you 24/7 available. Yeah, so with that, I really would just like to thank you all again for everything that you're doing. These numbers are can only stay this low if we continue the efforts, keep listening to the mayor's orders. Franklin County Public Health, none of us are back in the office and won't be until completely necessary. Right now, we're just going to continue to track and monitor the cases and try to provide information and continue to support our communities in the best way that we can. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tyler, and thank you to Franklin County Public Health. From a public communications perspective, I can say that you're a wonderful partner for this city. It's been really wonderful and easy to draw from the content that you've produced to help share with Whitehall residents. So I do encourage everybody listening out there, if you have any questions for Tyler or for Franklin County Public Health, please do go ahead and submit those in the chat bar. We'll be happy to ask those of Tyler later here on during the Q&A portion of this. So with that, oops, sorry, go ahead.
I will add, I do have to run. I have a prevention education meeting starting up here at 1 o'clock. But I am happy to, provide my email. Any questions that come my way, Megan, please, and I will make sure that we get those answered.
That sounds great, Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we are going to go ahead and keep going with the rest of our virtual town hall today. I'd like to go ahead and introduce your police chief, Mike Crispin.
And I'm going to go ahead and ask him if you can share there you go. Technology, of course. Okay, first, again, thanks, Megan, for that introduction. Thank you, Mayor, also, and Tyler. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know you've got a lot going on with what you're doing, as well as the Narcan and overdose issues. So thank you for what you do. I'd also like to thank IT. This is an interesting thing. It's the first time we've done a town hall in a virtual setting, and so I like to thank IT. They're always around, but in this era where we're all social distancing, if we didn't have technology and those who are very good at connecting them, social distancing would be a whole lot more lonely for a lot of our citizens. So thanks, IT, for what you do. Austin, Brett, I can't help but thank the healthcare folks in the community for helping us out and being a part of this. So what I want to do first is I want to go into, and this is why we're doing this, partly why we're doing this, is we were supposed to have a town hall meeting a couple months ago, and it's been over 6 months roughly since we had our last one. And when we had that last town hall meeting, we were talking a lot about when the strategic plan ends. And so we should have already sort of updated you on the end of that 3-year plan. So I wanted to briefly go over those numbers for you. If I look back about 4 years ago, we talked about holding the police department accountable to 3 major areas of violent crime, robberies, and burglaries, as we made theft arrests go up and through our operations. And you did that. You hung in there tight with us. And the police officers did a great job. They partnered with different businesses in the community. And you're looking on the screen there at that final 3-year result. Violent crime went down 27% over a 3-year average. That's phenomenal. Robberies were down 38%, and burglaries were nearly cut in half. And in fact, so close that we were frustrated we couldn't get 3% more just to make it 50%. But we're not done, obviously, for the next 3 years. But if we were here in a room together, I'm sure we'd all be sort of clapping. So if you want to give a fist bump in the air by yourself, that's great. But I'm really proud of what these guys have done, gals, and what you folks have done to work with us to get this down to these numbers. We're going to obviously continue with a plan for the next 3 years, which I'll talk about in a second. But additionally, if you take a look there over those 3 years, we had 500 pounds of illegal narcotics, which equals millions of dollars in street value narcotics. We had over $1 million in illegal cash that was seized. And with that, we were able to purchase 4 K9s to help us with the drug problem further. We got a new bike patrol unit back out in the parks, and we were able to restructure our command staff, which helped a lot with this next 3-year strategic plan. And we covered a lot of that the last town hall meeting. I just wanted to finalize it for you, so I'm not going to get a lot of details on that because we've already done that. But I would encourage you to download this next strategic plan. It's on the internet. and that's the 2020 to 2023 strategic plan. The thing that's interesting about this next 3-year plan is, first and foremost, a lot of great things were happening with the community and with our officers that we aren't going to stop doing. Certainly, if it worked, we're going to continue to do that. But what we did this time was, rather than have a 3-year strategic plan that was specifically management led, we allowed the frontline officers who do the job every day, who know more about what's going on than we do on the streets, help us design the next 3-year plan that would help make this more successful. And again, I encourage you, because lack of time, I'm certainly not going to go over it all today, but I really encourage you to get online and download that and read it and see how it impacts you. And I'd love to entertain conversations, phone calls, or emails if you have questions after you read it. A couple of the highlights that are in this strategic plan coming up is our excellence in policing model. Well, that sounds like a cliche. It comes with a lot of sub-responsibilities for the department. And when you read that plan, you'll notice that we've done a lot of things at the request of supervision and the officers themselves to hold ourselves to a higher standard, accountability measures, where our officers and lieutenants in particular, and sergeants, will probably be reaching out to some people in the community when they've had interactions with police officers, just to see sort of a quasi satisfaction kind of thing. Not that anybody ever is satisfied that they got a ticket or arrested or whatever, but that's not all we do. And so even in those situations, we want to know, maybe you're not happy about the arrest, but were you treated fairly and professionally? And additionally, as you might recall, we have body cameras and things of that nature that we also review on a routine basis. So that strategic plan going into the next 3 years is to sort of hold ourselves to a higher standard. And that's why you see the phrase excellence in policing. We want to be the model for not just the city of Whitehall, but for the state of Ohio. And that's our goal. So you'll also hear, we haven't had a whole lot of opportunities because of this COVID-19 situation, but you'll start to notice the chief's office coming out and talking to businesses and to the community about developing public-private partnerships to further reduce the crime opportunities in our community. And we really would like to have a much greater community involvement over the next 3 years. And that's one of our big plans for the chiefs themselves. So moving on, I know a lot of you are sort of interested in, now that we've wrapped up the strategic plan, sort of interested in what are we doing right now and how did this COVID-19 pandemic affect the police department and our functions. I will tell you that we certainly, some of those things in our strategic plan sort of got put on hold for a minute for a multitude of reasons. The most important one being for the safety of our officers and the safety of the community. We sort of backed off a little bit on some of that stuff, not completely. We are still very focused on maintaining those successes that we had over the past 3 years. So that's not going away. But we did tell officers to be careful when they're making proactive contacts, be very safe with their health and be very safe with the health of the people that they're interacting with. So that's something that we've done. We've also asked the community to do a couple of different things for us, and you've really done that a lot, and that's been very helpful. And that is, if you have an issue that you can report online, and if you go on our website, you'll find on there the things that qualify for an online report. That's a much better way of submitting a police request or a police report, and you'll be contacted by the detective when they're back in office. So we're asking people to do that more. And that's not to say that you can't get a police officer to your residence. We certainly will send one if you request one. The dispatcher may ask a few questions and even ask if you're willing to go online and report it. But if you're not, we'll still come out. But just understand, the more that you can do that, the more the officers are freed up to take care of other issues in the community. And that's been happening quite a bit and been very successful. We've also asked the community through social media to be aware that our officers and our dispatchers are probably going to ask you to come outside of your house if we come to your home for a call, for your protection and our protection. That doesn't mean we won't go inside if it's necessary, but in the initial response, we would prefer people come outside, and we're out in the fresh air, we can social distance. And speaking of social distancing, you'll probably see our officers, they're going to wear a different form of mask to protect you from and themselves. And it's more, they're called a gaiter, but they're around their neck. The reason for that is it's much more user friendly for them. If they have to go chasing somebody, or if if they can pull it up and down really quickly, it'll cover their necks and ears and nose and mouth, but it won't look like a traditional mask, but it's just as effective. So just so you know, if you see that, it looks a little different, but it's for your safety and for their safety that they're wearing them. And the last thing I like to say about the COVID-19 is that when this thing first started, much like the rest of us in the nation and yourselves, it was very important for our police department to maintain a very good community relations program that we've had success with over these years. And one of our first concerns was the moment we have to start going to all these businesses and things and start taking enforcement actions on folks because they're not following the orders. That was a bit of a concern for us because we've built some really good relationships. And we asked our officers to use good communication skills if if it was necessary, and to communicate well with others, and to simply ask the businesses to reach out to Department of Health and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mention all that to say it was really nice to know that in the city of Whitehall, how everybody in our community has been very supportive of the need to fight this pandemic and this coronavirus and keep themselves safe and do what we just simply say is just doing the right thing. And they've done the right thing, because the proof of that is that our officers have not had to arrest anybody for anything related to this. And I think that's a phenomenal testament to this, how serious the community is taking this. And that's something we just absolutely didn't want to do and haven't had to do. And we think that's great. And we thank you for your assistance in that. And the last thing I would say on that is that, when you think about the community and its support of law enforcement and public safety in general, I've always thought it was pretty neat here where Whitehall is so supportive of their police department. They're always bringing food in. They're always bringing anything they think we might need. And this is no different. I couldn't even tell you the number of people now that have sent emails or just showed up with masks that they set at home and they made on their sewing machine and spent hours doing so, bringing them to us. And we've got plenty of them. And we've also, had plenty of other resources. But what I would like to say is looking ahead and some of the things we always talk about, which is what can you do today to make Whitehall a safer place? And usually in these town halls, I like to give an idea. As much as we're appreciative of the community providing us with, things like these protective equipment like masks and offering food, and some have even offered to buy us different types of things they think might help us do our job safer. I would like to say that first, the city and the state and even the federal government through grants has made sure that we had the equipment that we need, and we're working, and we're humble about that, and we're appreciative of the situation we're in. Even though our officers are forced to go into areas, as well as the fire, to go into areas that are potentially opposite of what we're asking everybody to do, which is to distance yourself from potential coronavirus contact. We're asking our officers to go into places where the likelihood is greater. All that said, we still are quite humble and appreciative of what you're doing. And so we would ask that the thing that you can do to make Whitehall safer now is, if you want to do something on our behalf, take some of those masks or food or money that you want to help us with, and take it to a food bank, or find somebody who, in this day and age, we know there's a lot of people out there who are out of work, who don't have resources to pay their bills, or even sometimes even to have some food, some bread or milk in their house. So if you could take that energy, that your nature as you are in Whitehall, and help a friend and help a neighbor, I think that would be go a lot more towards helping our mission than for us if you bring food in. So while we absolutely appreciate it, there's a lot of people hurting in Whitehall, and that's what I would ask. That's the ask I'm leaving you with for the Safer Whitehall initiative for this time, is just find somebody every day, every week, if necessary, that you can help. And if you have extra resources, reach out and help them. So we really appreciate what you do, and I'm sure they would as well. So for me, that's what we have for an update. I look forward to doing these. Hopefully next time we do it in person. But as of now, this seems to work, and we're going to do something just a little bit different. We haven't done this before, and I'm really happy to be doing it. And that is, we're joined by our fire chief, Preston Moore, for our town hall meeting. And I'm going to turn this over to him to give you an update on the fire department.
Thank you, Chief Crispin. I'm glad to be here today, and I'm thankful for everybody that's out there listening and concerned about their community and want to know what's going on. As you can imagine, with the pandemic that's going on, infection control practices are paramount for EMS agencies, and I wanted to kind of talk to you today about what the Division of Fire has been doing. So just wanted to let you know, our folks here have been very well prepared for this pandemic, because over the last several years, we put a lot of infection control policies in place that have to do with other diseases besides this COVID. So my hat's off for the employees that work here and our EMS coordinator for making sure we were well prepared. So when we look at infection control, there's a couple things that we find to be paramount. The first thing is we need to protect our employees so they can stay on the job to continue to come serve you. The other thing our policies focus on is protecting you by not bringing the virus with us when we come to serve you. So at this point, we've been very successful. We've not had any employee test positive for COVID-19, nor have we had to quarantine anyone. So we've been very successful of keeping the disease out of the firehouse. So with the infection control policies, it all starts with the call. And during this time of the pandemic, the EMS call takers are asking some additional questions. I just wanted to go through those with you. And I want you to keep in mind that none of these additional questions, when you call the call taker, will slow down the trucks. It just helps us be more prepared when we get there. So if you or one of your family members calls for you, let them know that the call taker is going to ask them if the patient has or believed to have had a fever, cough, or shortness of breath. They will also ask if the patient is under public health monitoring for COVID-19. Also, they will ask if the patient has been exposed to anyone who has tested positive or is under public health monitoring. So all that does is help the dispatcher to know to send us a message to let us know extra precautions will be needed for personal protective equipment. So don't hesitate to answer yes to those questions if they apply. It won't slow us down. So when we get there, on every run now, the paramedics will be using a lot of personal protective equipment and essentially masks almost every time. And with the disposable stuff in short supply, the Division of Fire has went to half-face respirators. I wanted to show one of those to you. These are a high level of protection for us, but as you can imagine, it does inhibit communication to some point. So please bear with us as we try to communicate while wearing these half-face respirators when we come to see you. If they're not wearing those, as you know, there's disposable N95s that they will be wearing. So that should happen almost every time. When we get to your house, we will try to limit exposure to the providers to 1 to 2 paramedics, if possible. We also may ask at the front door if it is possible for the patient to come to the front door to begin the interview. This is just so we can maintain social distancing for you and the rest of your family when we get there. We will try to maintain a 6-foot safe distance at all times until we can get a surgical mask on the patient. So if the patient is suspect, we have these blue surgical masks that we will try to put on the patient to help us when it comes time to do a hands-on assessment and those kinds of things. So after that, everything else remains the same given the chief complaint of the patient. But one of the paperwork issues we had to deal with is once we gather your information, we usually have you or a family member sign permission for treatment and permission to share your EMS record with the hospital. Right now, during this time, due to cross-contamination issues, we're trying not to hand a computer or a notepad that we're carrying around to the patient to have them sign. So what we are doing is asking permission to sign for the patient. And that's one of the policies that has changed during this pandemic. So how that works is if you need to go to the hospital as we're finishing the report, the paramedic will ask you if you give them permission to sign for your treatment. If you say yes, they will sign their name on the permission to treatment form and document that verbal permission was given. This doesn't take away any of your rights. It just allows us to stop the cross-contamination from the devices from handing them from person to person. If we do have a suspect COVID run, we are very adamant about disinfecting the equipment we use. So after the run is over, we do a thorough decontamination of the truck. The ambulance is returned to the station. We remove the cot, a lot of the handheld equipment. We spray down everything with disinfectant, wipe down all the surfaces, and leave the doors open in the open air for it all to air dry. If a crew member is exposed, they shower and change clothes so as not to continue the decontamination. And this is all done so that we don't take the virus to the next patient. One last thing from the Division of Fire, there has been a surge of overdoses lately, as Tyler talked about. I just want to let you know if anybody is suffering addiction, they can still get help here through our Safe Station program. So we've made a couple modifications. We would ask that you call first, ask to talk to the community paramedic or the social worker that can answer Safe Station questions, and we will try to work out the intake to treatment over the phone without you having to come in. And as Tyler said, we don't want anybody continuing to suffer with addiction during this time if we can help them out. And we also are a terminal distribution point for Narcan for anyone that needs it. And like any natural disaster, as is the global pandemic, my last thought is to please take care of your family, take care of your neighbors, and take care of your community. And now we'll pass it back to Megan for the question and answer period.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chief Moore, and to Chief Crispin for sharing those insights with us. We are now going to also be joined by our deputy chiefs in the police division. So I welcome to the panel Deputy Chief Dan Kelso and Tracy Sharpless. Thank you both for joining us. I do want to apologize before we get into the Q&A. We did have some technical difficulties at the beginning of the GoToMeeting, and the ability to send us questions wasn't yet enabled. So if you would like to submit questions other than what you submitted during registration, you should be able to go ahead and do that now, and we'll take a look at those as we go. So we're going to jump right in. Chief Crispin, we're going to start with you. During registration, multiple participants asked about the impact that the stay-at-home order and the City of Whitehall's curfew had on crime in Whitehall. Can you speak to how the curfew assisted the Division of Police?
Certainly, thank you, Megan, and whoever it was that asked those questions. The very I think it's very important to first start with something that if Tyler was here, he'd probably champion, and all the rest of us would champion. I'm certain the fire chief would with his background, and that is that the stay-at-home orders and things that had people do the social distancing and all the steps that were put in place to reduce the impact actually worked. I mean, we saw the low numbers in here in Whitehall in general. So that alone, the health side of it can't be said enough, I'm sure. But what is important though is what has it done with crime? I don't have it in front of me, but if you saw a graph of it, what you would see initially up front with the stay-at-home orders is all crime across the board went down significantly. Calls for service were down significantly for us. And in that over a few weeks, those started to creep back up. But at the very beginning, I think the community in general, everybody was really scared and concerned about this, rightfully so, and people stayed home. Over time, people have slowly started to work their way back out of their houses and things, and the criminals are no different, people who break the law, and things have started to creep back up just a little. But we're still right around average or below average on some of our theft situations. So in that sense, it's we're carrying on our business. But that's what happened with crime in general. Now, the curfew question, I mentioned earlier how important it was for the community to help us out. And one of the things that happened when the stay-at-home order went in place is we recognized the recreational use, or the recreational exemption, I should say, that was in the governor's orders. It became an almost immediate concern for us, because one of the most prominent ways some of our thieves get around at nighttime in particular, but just get around in the dark, is on bikes. And we were just a bit concerned that when we asked all the businesses to leave, or the owners and the workers to leave their businesses, and that they would be empty. And we have a decent sized nighttime business population that they would no longer be operating. We were a little bit concerned about that. So what we really did was just eliminate that exemption. And the rest of the stuff was still in play by the governor's office and the director of public health. What that did for us is allow us to interact with people who were behind businesses and places that maybe that if they'd been walking down the street, we wouldn't have paid a whole lot of attention to them. Because there's really nothing wrong with doing that. Now we are able to not only interact with folks, but there were quite a few caught in the act breaking and entering that are officers who are working both undercover and in uniform and in patrol cars were able to intervene and stop. And so we really was able to, that curfew was able to really prevent a lot of breaking and enterings and crime that was occurring that we probably would have been hampered had we not had that. Now that the businesses are starting to reopen, that's not in place anymore, but that was the reason for it, and it was very successful in protecting people's properties.
Chief. My next question is for Chief Moore. Chief Moore, one participant asked about how many hours our first responders and police officers are working. So can you speak to how the shifts have been handled during COVID to make sure both that our first responders are staying safe and to still meet the needs of the community?
Like as most everyone knows, the firefighters work a 24 on, 48 off schedule. And what we did is we pretty much eliminated vacation time off, so we didn't cross-contaminate the crews. So no one has been working overtime, so everybody who works a 24-hour shift does go home. And we did roll call a little bit different at 7 in the morning. We make sure that the off-going shift does not have contact with the oncoming shift. And then the first thing the oncoming shift does is decontaminate the building. So we tried to practice our own social distancing here, but in the division of fire, the shifts have not changed.
Chief Crispin, can you speak a little bit to how things have changed for the police officers?
Yes, Megan. One of the things that we did was we took a look at the departments and what happens if we get an exposure and we're not sure who all they've been in contact with. There's the potential of us losing a significant number of people, both from those who may be positive having to be quarantined and then those who need to self-quarantine. So early on, we talked about dividing the department up into essentially 3 distinct police departments, of which none of those individual three groups would ever be in contact with each other for any significant amount of time. And each one of those groups works for 3 12-hour shifts, and then they're off for a while, and then the next group comes in and works for 3 12-hour shifts. That gives us plenty of time to allow the first group that was working to be off, and for us to see that there's considered an 11.5 days incubation period, roughly is the average for COVID-19 if you're exposed. So we had made the assumption that that's the closest we could get. It's a 9-day period before they're back at work again. And we'd be able, if one of them was exposed, they would only expose half of that one group. So the numbers were getting much smaller, that if we had to lose everybody that was working that shift, we had plenty of people to come back and still maintain our safety forces. And so that's the shifts that we've been working, and the guys and gals have been very, very prudent about hygiene, and we even had quite a bit of donated hand sanitizers and things of that nature, and they've been using it religiously. So we haven't had any significant problems, but that's the shifts they've been working.
Great, thank you, Chief. This next question is going to go to Deputy Chief Sharpless. We know that our forces are actually joined by some canine units in the Whitehall Division of Police. We had one dog lover asked how the canine units have been used during COVID-19, and has the virus impacted that aspect of your operations in any way?
Yes, everyone seems to love the dogs, as do we. As the chief mentioned, our officers are essentially working 12-hour shifts, so we have a day shift and a night shift, and the dogs have been divided up, and we have dogs working day and night, so the dogs are out there and available to our officers. They've been impacted probably in similar ways to the officers. We try to limit any unnecessary interaction, and obviously we're checking their health regularly. The dogs do go to the veterinarians on a regular basis, and in fact, the dogs actually have been vaccinated against the specific strain that's supposed to impact animals, but honestly, nobody really knows for sure, so we monitor their health on a regular basis. The dogs are a tremendous asset to the department and to the city. We will continue to utilize them as needed. So rest assured that we love them as much as the public, and they're being well taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Continuing on with just a few more COVID questions, and then we have some other questions unrelated to that. Chief Crispin, many participants in their questions actually submitted a complaint, a concern about somebody breaking some part of the stay at home or stay safe Ohio order. What should a resident do if they have a complaint about enforcement of the order, either for another community member or for one of the members of our business community?
We would ask that these, if you have a complaint or an issue, you're certainly welcome to call us. But I will tell you that one of the quickest ways that it can be dealt with, and this is how we end up dealing with it as well. So if we have a question or a concern, or we have a business that's probably operating maybe outside of the orders, we're going to reach out to Franklin County's Department of Health. That's who we're going to contact. And in many ways, many cases, we're actually going to submit an online complaint. We're not going to really get too involved in it because it's really a health issue. And the orders that they're putting in place, they're better to figure out whether or not it's an actual violation or whether they're essential or not. So for us, that's what we do. If you want to do that, that would make it quicker. The health department then will reach out to us and let us know if it's something for sure that we need to enforce or take some type of action. We haven't actually had to do anything but just ask people and tell them what the orders say, and they didn't know or weren't aware, and they make some adjustments. Again, I said this earlier, and it's still our goal. If we end this thing from beginning to end, not having to make a single arrest on any of these things, that would be absolutely tremendous. It's not a goal of ours. The only goal we have is keeping people safe and healthy. And so that's the reason we reach out to the Department of Health. That's the reason that they talk to the business owners. When we interact with somebody for a complaint, we ask for their compliance, and for the most part, just about everybody does it. But again, to answer the question, you can contact us, or you can go online, Department of Health, and submit right online a complaint, and many times that's exactly what we do.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take a second to go to some of the questions that have been submitted through the chat. And one I'd like to go ahead and answer myself. The question is, can the Whitehall community have a list of legitimate places to purchase protective masks? I have had friends who have ordered a mask from a website and it turned out to be a scam. And I'd like to thank whoever submitted that question. Essentially, we have a couple different resources that we'll go ahead and share with the community. So please look to our website and social media pages. I can say that one of the easiest things to do is to make a mask yourself. I would encourage everybody to remember that N95 and surgical masks shouldn't be worn by the public. Those should be reserved for our medical professionals and first responders. So other face masks or face coverings can be easily made from items that you have at home. And so we'll share some resources like that. So thank you for that question. I'm going to follow up with one more question specifically about COVID, and I'm going to give this back to Chief Crispin. A couple questions have come in about how many residents have tested positive in Whitehall for COVID and how many have been tested generally. And I wondered if you could speak real quickly to how we're shared data from Franklin County Public Health and the state of Ohio.
So Franklin County Public Health and of course the state of Ohio rightfully are very protective about people's personal information. The one thing I will say with that, I'll answer that, Megan, but the one thing I will say is I will remind people that when someone tested positive, their next door neighbor tested positive, the only thing they have done wrong, which is nothing. They just got sick. And so we're not trying to say, hey, this is your neighbor, you got a problem next door. And that's the reason why we're not saying to the community, this is where a house tested positive or these folks tested positive. In fact, the Department of Health says if you still maintain their standards, social distance, hygiene, wear a mask, you won't have any issue with it. So that being said, I want to make sure I said that. I will tell you that Tyler would probably be a better person, and probably he would even struggle at answering how many people have been tested in Whitehall. But I do know that the Franklin Department of Health, Franklin County Department of Health, as well as the state, they provide law enforcement and public safety with that information so that our officers, a fire department, police officers will know when they're going in the house. It's in our system to let us know to make sure we wear our protective equipment because we're going in a different way. So in that sense, I can tell you that for the city of Whitehall, we're roughly right around 75 or 80 total positive tests for the city.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chief Crispin. We're going to move away from talking about COVID for a little bit. I think we could all use a break from that topic. And so I have a question for Deputy Chief Kelso. One participant today wants to know about what can be done about speeding on his street. Can you speak to how speeding in the community is monitored and how problem areas are addressed?
Yeah, that's kind of a threefold answer. First off, when we get complaints, one of the things that we do is put out our radar trailers. I think everyone's probably seen those on their road or a nearby road. That has a calming effect on the traffic, slows the traffic down. So if you have a problem or you believe that you have a problem on your road, feel free to call me, leave me a voicemail, send me an email, and we get those trailers out on your road, and it does have a calming effect. It doesn't always stop it, but it helps out quite a bit. Second, the city a couple years ago purchased a bunch of covert radars that we put up on telephone poles. Those can't be seen by the public. So what we're able to do is actually get true speed monitoring from that road. So the public doesn't know like a radar trailer, so they don't have that slow down right away as soon as you see it. And we get this data and we know exactly how many cars are going down that road, how fast those cars are going, what time of the day, we have any problems whatsoever. So what we do is we take all that data and we have a guy that's in charge of it, Officer Brown. He puts that data out to officers first off, if there is any issue. He contacts me if he does find something. I get all that data and we can set up specific speed patrols for any roads that we find are having an issue. Honestly, most of our neighborhood streets, although of course you're going to have outliers and you're going to have somebody speeding down your road every now and then, we're finding that the majority of our neighborhood streets honestly have a lower than average for the speed limit. And if it is over the speed limit, it's 1 or 2 miles per hour. Yes, you get a few cars here and there, but when you're monitoring 7,000 cars going down that road over a period of a week or two, you're finding out that 6,900 of them are going close to the speed limit. Then you have, you know, a number of them that are way outside boundaries, and those are typically what the neighbors are seeing. So even if our data doesn't support that your road's got an issue, if you call me and say, hey, I'm seeing these problems, and I look at the data and say, well, I'm not seeing it, that doesn't mean we're going to ignore you. That's still an important complaint to you. It's an important complaint to the neighbors that are seeing this kind of stuff. So what I do is I take that information, I give it to the lieutenant in charge of that shift, or the sergeant that's in charge of that shift, and he'll sign an officer to specifically watch that road and not necessarily set up a directed patroller who's going to sit there for 6 or 7 hours, but during his 8 or 12-hour shift, he's going to be up and down monitoring that road and trying to write tickets for these driving behaviors that cause crashes. And that's part of our strategic plan, is to increase citations to people that are specifically driving behaviors that cause crashes. So we look into that, and that's the second way we do that. Our third way is every quarter we look at our stats for the previous year and the previous quarter. So we take those previous year stats for, say, Q3 and previous second quarter stats. We mesh those together. Our crime analysts come up with where are the hot spots that last year we had issues with crashes, and last quarter where we had issues with crashes that may bleed into this quarter. And I set up specific directed patrols in those areas. Oftentimes those are on main roads, so those don't end up in the neighborhoods, but they could if we have an issue in a certain neighborhood. And those specific stats then are used for these directed patrols that we assign officers 2, 3, 4 days a week to do nothing but watch and monitor those areas during certain hours. So with all three of those, that's essentially what we do every single day.
Wow, thank you, Deputy Chief Kelso. Chief Crispin, another question for you. One participant asked about what can be done to prevent criminals from moving into Whitehall. What would you say to that community member?
Well, the one thing I would say about that is I don't think there's a law that can be passed to prevent people from coming in or anything specific like that, clearly. The thing that we look at in law enforcement is a phrase called displacement, because criminals are always going to be around and always exist since the dawn of time. They've been around. So in law enforcement, the goal is always, whether through your strategic plans or whatever other methods you put in place, is to displace the crime to some of the location. If you're working closely, the best case scenario is when you're working closely with your next door neighbors, in our case, Gahanna, Reynoldsburg, Columbus, and Bexley, and working closely with them. We have similar plans, so we put them even further out and away from our areas. That said, that's a great question. If you read our strategic plan, one of the things that we're really focused on this next 2 or 3 years is creating what we call a community that's postured, that this isn't a place that's welcoming to criminals, right? It's not a place where you're going to come here and commit crimes. Anybody's welcome to live here, work here, play here, shop here. You're just not welcome to come in and commit crimes. And we're taking a zero tolerance stance on theft. We always believe, and still do believe, and that last 3-year strategic plan proved it, that theft is really sort of the root that sort of drives a lot of this crime. You can't buy narcotics unless you got something to buy it with. A lot of times they're not working full-time jobs to do this, and so they're stealing from people and using that to help them fund their habits. Along with narcotics comes violence and things of those nature. So we really focus and take a hardline stance on theft. And then moving into the next 3 years, we're asking the community to help us by fostering their own environment, whether that be locking up your cars and talking to your neighbors, getting to know your neighbors, and learning what you can do in your environment to not make it an opportunity to be a victim of crime. And those things, if you do that well as a community, the criminals will see that the risk outweighs the reward, and they'll go somewhere else. And that's really the best that we can do to manage keeping criminals out of our community. Everybody working together, everybody paying attention. You see something, you say something, you call somebody. It just really takes everybody, a lot like this issue we're dealing with now. It just takes everybody taking care of each other.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chief Crispin. We are coming up on our hour mark, and so we're going to go ahead and end our Q&A session and wrap up the town hall overall. However, before I do, I did want to read just one more comment that was submitted from one of our participants today. This individual wrote, "I do not have a question, but as a business owner in Whitehall, I want to extend my thanks and appreciation to both Chief Crispin and Chief Moore for everything they have done to get us through this." And so I know many in our community feel exactly the same way. I know that I do, and that, you know, everyone in city leadership looks up to you both. And so just want to say thank you for all that you and your crews are doing. You're really inspiring. And with that, does anybody else have anything before we wrap this up?
No, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
Mike.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, then the last closing comment will be, of course, please do continue to engage with the city throughout the remainder of COVID and beyond that. Please do subscribe to Whitehall e-update. We're currently sending daily updates on COVID and other city service information. And we're also posting that to our Facebook, Twitter pages, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So please stay engaged with us as we continue to get through this. And that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.